I'm Debbie Harmon-Ferry, Director of Alumni and Parent Relations, here with another Tips for Parents. My guest today is Jennifer Knight from our Office of Financial Aid, and we're here to talk about the FAFSA. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Debbie. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. So let's start by talking about what does FAFSA stand for, and when is the best time for families to complete the FAFSA?
The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the best time to file the FAFSA is as soon after January 1st as possible. Financial aid sometimes is on a first-come, first-served basis, and the state of Oregon has a deadline of February 1st in order to qualify for the state Oregon Opportunity Grant. So for parents who, in families who are from out of state, even though February 1 is the deadline for Oregon residents, we still encourage everyone that's filling out the FAFSA to do it early.
Okay, and just to clarify, can people file before January 1st?
Well, because we're on the West Coast, there is a 2-hour window where families could, on the 31st of December, go out at 10 p.m. if they're very eager. But the federal government doesn't post the new 2015-2016 FAFSA online until January 1st. But that is based off a central time zone.
And if folks have not done so by February 1st, is that too late then?
They could still file the FAFSA after that date.
Okay. It's just better off if they do it earlier.
Exactly.
Terrific. Great. Now, how about what materials do families need to have gathered in order to submit a FAFSA? What would be helpful?
That's great question, because oftentimes most families in January haven't filed their federal tax returns yet, but they can still file their FAFSA. They just need to use estimated 2014 income information. So if families want to, they could go back to their 2013 federal tax returns if they filed in 2013 and gather some of the data off of that, or they could capture their 2014 end of the year pay stubs and give a good estimate. And then it's okay for them to estimate information on the FAFSA to get it in early, because there will be an opportunity for them to go back to FAFSA.gov, the official site, and make corrections.
Now, if a family filed a FAFSA last year, let's say their sons or daughters are already first-year students at Linfield, so next year they would be looking at their sophomore years, do they need to complete another one, or does that suffice for their entire college career?
Unfortunately, one time doesn't cover their whole college career, so they're going to fill out the FAFSA annually, and we recommend that the families do that in January. The good news is most of the demographic information will roll over, and so they'll really be submitting a renewal FAFSA if they're a continuing student, and they'll just have to update their income and asset information if the skip logic within FAFSA on the web asked for it.
Now, how about if a family did file the FAFSA last year but didn't qualify for need-based aid? Is it worth it for them to try again, or do you recommend you're probably going to get the same result?
I recommend that every family, regardless of their income level, file the FAFSA on an annual basis. Our office then will make sure that that student gets a financial aid offer, and they can pick and choose the financial aid they'd like to accept or reject. And you know, unfortunately, sometimes things happen in households, like some families have a loss of a job, or maybe there's high medical expenses because of an illness. Those aren't things that you can report to the federal government, but you certainly could call me or anyone in our office, and we could work with the family to consider special circumstances to see if there's anything that we can do to help that family. So that's why I recommend, you know, every year make sure you do the FAFSA regardless of your income. So if you didn't get need-based aid one year, depending on if your income varies, it could reflect a different income level from year to year. Another reason to file the FAFSA is that some private scholarships require it. So I always say get in the habit of filling out the FAFSA. We'll offer the financial aid award, and if it's just student loans or employment and the student and parent don't wish to go that route, they can always reject that aid.
Good to have the option.
Yes. Exactly.
Now, one thing that I imagine might change a family's circumstances somewhat is perhaps this year they have one student in college, like we do in our house, but in a couple of years we'll have a second student going off to college. How does that work if you have more than one student and maybe at more than one college then in that case. In what way might that change the FAFSA or your results for the FAFSA?
Well, that's a great question. It happens quite often. Even here at Linfield, we have multiple students coming from one family. So the FAFSA is student-centric. So each of those students are going to be filling out their own FAFSA because it's a student-centric application, and then their parents' information, if required, will also go on that application. So in the federal formula, the need analysis formula, the student's information is added to the parent information to calculate the expected family contribution. So if in the household there's 2 people going to college, the student plus half of the parents will get EFC will get calculated. If there's 3 in college, the parents would get split into thirds. But if there's 2 in college, the parents' portion would get split in half, and then that totals the EFC. So the parent and the student's information gets added together to come up with the EFC. So how we then award financial aid is we take the cost of attendance at our college, or if you're in case you have students going elsewhere to other colleges, one here and one elsewhere, it's the cost of attendance at that college, and then minus that expected family contribution equals the need, and then we award based off of that.
So Linfield would have a way of finding out then when the FAFSA results are reported that particular estimated family contribution is potentially split over more than one student.
Yeah, because in the FAFSA itself, they're going to ask how many members are in that student's household size, including their parent, their legal parent, and their siblings. And then it also asks of the household members, how many of those members are going to college. Although if the parent's in college, unfortunately they cannot report that they're a number in the going to college.
How about, are there any major changes to the form or the way that that's handled this year? I know sometimes there's subtle changes, and some years there's a little bit bigger, more substantial changes, and you usually hear about those.
You know, there aren't drastic changes to the application itself. However, there are some expanded definitions. Because Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act that was struck down a couple years ago, there has been a change to who the parent is and whose information goes on the FAFSA and how that's reported. And so because of that, there's expanded definitions about who the parent is, especially when it comes to a situation where you have parents who are married or separated or never married and living together. And so FAFSA on the web will really help with the expanded instructions, get the definition to the student and their parents so they can figure out which parent's information goes on that FAFSA. So there's definitely some expanded definitions related to who a parent is and whose information goes on the FAFSA. Also, there is something called an IRS data retrieval tool within FAFSA on the web. And so around April 15th, the federal government starts to nudge the family saying, hey, it looks like you said you were going to complete a 2014 federal tax return and you haven't made a correction yet. And so they're going to get this nudge from the federal government, and if they're able to, they can go out to the student's FAFSA, say they're going to make a correction, navigate to the finances section, and say that they've completed their tax return, and it will link them out to the IRS, and they can actually utilize this tool to transfer their IRS data right into the FAFSA and then submit that correction into the federal processor. So there's going to be expanded instructions on how to do that so that it's easier for the families to make sure they get that process completed correctly.
And so that sounds like those folks that you recommend earlier could use estimated taxes. This is where that would kind of settle up, as it were.
Exactly, exactly. You know, not everybody's going to be able to take advantage of that tool, so they could still manually update their FAFSA information to get it corrected. But definitely this is a way for families to have an easy way to link their information if they're able to do so.
Now, I noticed your references have to do with link and that sort of thing. So this has changed from the day when I was a student and we used to fill out an actual form. Do I understand then that primarily people submit online the FAFSA by way of a website?
Yes, most families, I think 99% of all the federal FAFSA applications are completed electronically. And the benefits of doing so is because it's faster. There's skip logic built in. There's also a live chat feature, so there's a lot of help if families need it while they're filling out their FAFSA, where they could actually live chat with somebody from the federal government. There's a tips and an expanded instructions for different questions. So if they need more information to help them arrive at an answer, all of that's built into FAFSA on the web. Whereas the PDF paper version that they could print right off of FAFSA.gov, the instructions are very limited. So it's not as useful as the actual FAFSA on the web at FAFSA.gov.
Now, is there anything else you think it would be helpful for parents to know that we haven't discussed?
Well, I'll tell you, I just want families to know that they can call our office at any time, and there is no stupid question, that we want to help families get through this process that can feel sometimes cumbersome and overwhelming and kind of scary. And so I just want families to know they can call our office here at Linfield, and we'd be glad to help them through the process. I also want to say that our office moved. So if they are looking for us, we're no longer in Melrose 109. We've moved downstairs to the garden level, and now we're in the Student Central Suite 030 on the garden level, so they could come visit us there if they would like to talk in person.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Debbie.
So this is the last planned tip for parents for this year. However, we are always welcome to listen to your questions. So if you have ideas for other segments, we're open to that, and you can email us at parents@linfield.edu.